All right, Jake, you want to take us into this one?
So the movie this week is one that I remember watching not that many years ago. Like maybe 10. I guess that's a lot. But I was in college and it was late and we put it on and I fell asleep through it, but I really liked the concept and the start of it, and it's kind of always stuck with me. And I'm glad that I got to revisit it. We did An American Werewolf in London.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, like, I know that the American Werewolf in Paris is there, and it rolls off the tongue better. So I always want to say An American Werewolf in Paris, but we did An American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, I feel kind of the same way. But it's because I think I saw American Werewolf in Paris first, and yeah. So I think of that first, but I know there's the first one was London, right. And then there's actually I think it said in 2021, England. Yeah. Is coming out, or maybe it's out already. I don't know. I don't know that much. I didn't look into it. It's probably not worth it.
I've heard a bunch of stuff about it.
Oh, really?
Well, no, but I'm aware that it might be happening.
Gotcha. Yeah. I just found that out today, so that was cool.
I remember seeing the trailer for Paris when I was like growing up. I was like, oh, this looks cool. Didn't realize that there was a different one that was, 20 years before that.
Yeah, that's kind of same boat for me. I'd have to go back and watch that one, but the transformation for that at the time was interesting, and I wonder if because I'm assuming it was mostly CGI, I wonder if it looks dated. I'd have to check.
That's a good
question. Obviously at the time it always feels like it's believable because you only have seen so much. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Should I, before we go into details, should I do my usual thermometer?
Yeah. Give me
I end up writing them down. I always
give me the
try
toms.
To do that. All right, the toms. For An American Werewolf in London, 1981, because I can read numbers. 88% from the critics and 85% from from the audience. So it's coming in fresh. It's fresh.
Balanced.
Yeah.
Pretty fresh.
There's so much to just go over. Yeah. Do you want to start from the beginning, or do you have any specific things to talk about, or pain points maybe?
I don't really have too many pain points. I really enjoyed it. It's a little bit slower. I feel like the middle got a little muffled. Mm-hmm. But I like it. That was a big pause.
Yeah, just I like it. Okay, go on. I don't believe it now. You hesitated.
I did hesitate a lot there. So the part that I remember from when I watched it 10 years ago or so is just these two guys backpacking through England. And that's such a interesting thing to me. It's kind of on my bucket list that I want to go backpack through little villages in England and do a walking tour. And that's just such a creepy concept too. To just be wandering around villages that have been around for thousands of years.
Yeah, it's also unfamiliar for you, and that can be scary in itself.
Yeah,
I think, which we talked a little bit beforehand, was this movie paved the road kind of for some of the other films that came after it. I was reading one review that mentioned Lost Boys, which I don't know if it's because that's vampires and this is werewolves, or if it's just the kind of gritty, realistic 80s effects or makeup that they do. But I was also thinking, because the backpacking thing, the getting lost in Europe or whatever, that whole thing for an American, from an American perspective, would be like Hostel. Mm-hmm. Cause it started making me think of that, because that for me I may or may not have seen that before. I'm trying to remember when that came out, but just that concept of, I guess the one, yeah. Anyways, I was gonna mention the Paris movie, but
there really aren't, and I know there are some, but there aren't as much as other, like, zombies and vampires, and all of that has been so overdone throughout the years.
True.
There really aren't a lot of werewolf movies and books, and maybe there's books. There's a lot of books. There's so many books.
There was.
But
I actually thought of you speaking to that point a little bit of doing the if I redid it today kind of thing. I started thinking of how I would do that for this one, and I feel like you could probably do a pretty good job, and then do a mix of CGI with some of the classic to just kind of give that feel again.
Yeah,
I think that would be one way to make it a little more popular and all that. And not to go too much into detail on my thoughts on the whole thing, because I don't want to take away from your thunder in case you felt like...
I didn't have any remake thoughts about this one other than, I don't know what I'd do different. I just really like the first act, like up until the attack. And then there's like the middle area where he's in the hospital and he's kind of falling in love with this nurse. And then the third act's just him kind of... What I really like throughout it is that they don't really show the wolf until like near the end. They're always giving you like bits and pieces of it, but they're cutting around it. The
camera works so quick too sometimes, or shaky or whatever.
Yeah, and the effects are pretty good. The wolf's pretty terrifying. Like, I was pretty impressed by that. It didn't look like a real wolf, but it also didn't really look like it was a guy in a costume. It was like a weird puppet type thing, but it wasn't, I think. I don't know.
I thought of something interesting because they mention Wolfman in there, and I was looking at something else saying how well, I don't know if it was just because they reference it, but pulling some of the mythos or whatever you want to call it, idea behind it into the actual movie, and then it's been 40 years, and then it made me think, this is 81 and we're in 2021, so now would actually be a good time to release to kind of do the same thing. You get kind of a glimpse of where they were in the 40s, and then so that was just an interesting thought. And then they included it in there because would you call that a pop culture reference then, because it's a movie and people would know about it? And I think they give credit to Tarantino and Pulp Fiction doing that a lot, and then setting the stage for movies after that to include more pop culture references. Right. So this was just one, but it may be tangenting too much in that maybe it more parallels than it's just referencing a movie that they know. Right. But something that it's a small piece. I don't know if it's important, but what did you think about them starting off riding in the truck with the sheep?
I thought it was an interesting way to introduce the characters. I wasn't a big fan of the banter toward the sheep. That was a little like weird. Yeah. Or it just felt unnatural. I'm sure that they could have just done it differently and it would have been fine. But I really like the introduction. Like, I like, but I hate that when they go into this bar, there's like a pentagram on the wall, there's candles and stuff, and it's just like, we don't talk about this.
Yeah, the whole thing is weird.
Yeah.
The whole thing is weird.
And I hate that we don't get like a good backstory as to like, how long have these werewolves been running around this village? And, you know, I really want that. I want the history of things like that.
So that'd be one thing you could include in the remake, is going a little bit more deep into maybe their involvement, because they obviously know something about it. And then it seems like the original werewolf must have just been in the countryside, right? So then do you have... I don't know, I started thinking about that because there's this... A long time ago, and you may still experience it today, is this romanticism about the country and kind of going back to that in comparison to city, and maybe there's like some sort of theme there of countryside versus living in urban life or dwellings and stuff. So I don't know, there's just an idea. I thought the sheep could be, they were riding with the sheep, and you kind of think of a wolf and sheep, and then they become like they are sheep. And that's good. That's what I'm thinking. They are the sheep in that first 15-20 minutes, once they're being hunted for like the whatever minute they get lost, and then they're like, oh, we should have heeded the warning, and then now we don't know where to go, and then they get attacked, which is all I think is pretty well done, or at least it was interesting. My main description for the movie as a whole, and I'll try to break it down quickly, is goofy and gory. Because it's a little goofy with the people in the bar, and maybe the acting or something, it's just not quite great. And then there's gore because they get torn up. Right. And then there's also like the guy that's stuck in purgatory, or whatever it would be called, whatever they call it in the movie. Yeah, the limbo. Yeah, limbo. Whatever. I think he was saying where limbo. He's constantly kind of decaying, but is just like the same personality they had before, and is just trying to get this guy to kill himself so that he can go to heaven or hell. Which all. That makes sense in that. Why wouldn't if you can interact with them, or is it all in his head? That's another thing. That was another part I was thinking for like a remake. You could kind of, with it being so goofy, you could almost take that same tone, but set it up where it's pretty realistic. And then once he contracts the lycanthropy, then all that stuff happens, and you really make it where you make the audience question whether or not any of this is really happening the way it's happening. Right. Does that make sense? Like you kind of which you kind of do with the night. He has the nightmares, obviously, but like really blur the lines a little bit more. Yeah. No, I like that idea. That'd be nice. Turn it a little more psychological. Yeah, a little bit, because like you kind of want to keep in. Maybe some of the gore, because it's a werewolf. I mean, there's people are going to get torn to shreds at some point. Oh yeah. But a lot of it does go where it's kind of slow in the beginning, and then all of a sudden a bunch of stuff happens, and there's a bunch of shakiness, and it's crazy, and then that kind of happens, I think, at less and less intervals in between, where it's not, until the end, and then it's just the last 8 minutes are like, what the? And then it just kind of it's like gunshot credits. Yeah. Like they don't like close off anything. They don't like news reporters came in, and they don't really answer any of those questions either. They just kind of, he like turns back, doesn't he? Yeah, he does too. Yeah. So, it's just, I don't know. I liked that it ended that way, because it adds that air of mystery. And like that's what I like about them not really revealing a backstory or anything. There's interpretation available, but I also feel like that can be just sloppy writing. Yeah, it could be. It bothers me because I have a hard time when I'm writing something to like not have reasons for things to happen, and to just be like, this is the way it is. Yeah. And it just feels kind of like a cop-out. And I mean, maybe he had a backstory written in the script, and maybe, there was a bunch of other stuff they just cut out. But I just hate when movies don't really give you all the information. Like, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent here, but like... See, I don't mind that too much, to be a little contentious, is that filling in the blanks myself. Right. But there are, I understand to your point of sometimes I do want to just be told, or again, you could show, not tell, but give me that information. I don't mind things being up for interpretation, but there's gotta be an answer. Yeah, because I mean, like the director or the writer can know that there's an answer to it. They don't have to say it. That's a good point. But they have to know it, and then they can still leave it up for interpretation. But when it feels like they just are being lazy with it, like, I don't know why this is happening, I just think it's cool that it's happening, throw it in there, bugs me a little bit. To give them some credit, they explained just on one aspect, right, with all the people he killed, then all of a sudden they show up in that porno theater because he just killed them, and they don't once he's killed, we're to assume that they're now released, but who knows, maybe they aren't.
Right.
I mean, they kind of set it up so that's how it should be, and that's where we fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And that's where you can just cut that out. But yeah, there may be other things, or well, what is Alex, the nurse,
right,
girlfriend now? Which that's one thing that I didn't have written down, but I was thinking they fall. It's the whole they fall in love in a day and a half.
Yeah, in like 2 days.
Oh my god! Like, okay, how much? But
well, I mean, technically, I think he was in the hospital for a couple weeks.
Oh, that's a good point too. If they were,
but he was like passed out for most of it.
Yeah,
and she was reading, and then he would be having a werewolf nightmare off in the corner, and he'd wake up and hit on her. It's just kind of odd, but
the juxtaposition with the porno going on in the background, and then there being dead people, was pretty good.
Right.
I don't know if there's a lot of, now I'm thinking about it. Well, kind of the other nightmare where he's at his house, and then the monsters show up almost like they're like Nazis or something.
Yeah, the Nazi nightmare.
Nazi nightmare. And a nightmare within a nightmare, because then and there's that classic, okay, I woke up. Oh, I'm not.
Yeah, it's campy because it plays on those kind of tropes. But it's just interesting. Like, it doesn't take me too far out of it. True, yeah. Like, I was still kept in it.
If they lingered... or something, that would do it. Or they did the whole 5 or 10 minute scene, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, the whole thing right there was just part of this nightmare, and they're trying to trick us, or something like that would be that'd be worse.
But they played the line. Mm-hmm. They didn't overdo it, but they did it just enough to be like, I don't know what I'm interpreting or what I'm watching here. What's really going on?
I closed it, but I could pull it up. The review from...
We're all waiting.
Right? Because because before it was Siskel and Ebert, so this is Roger Ebert. Mm-hmm. Right? He has like his own website. And the first line says, it seems curiously unfinished. And that... maybe kind of a good, kind of how you were saying some stuff maybe got left out, or backstory, and then there maybe, I'm thinking with everything, but they did so much with the, I keep saying it's still effects, right? And makeup, they call it?
Yeah.
Or is it, it's special effects.
Special effects.
Maybe they put a lot of the budget into that. Maybe that's why too.
Right.
And other areas can suffer. Kind of like how I said, it was, for me, it felt, and maybe it's just because it's 1981, but a lot of the actors in the pub in the beginning seemed a little subpar in there.
No, I can agree with that, but it definitely does feel unfinished. That's a good way to put it. It's just, I feel like John Landis should have came out with a director's cut or something.
Mm-hmm. And then didn't he do the Thriller?
So
music video.
Yeah. So Michael Jackson watched An American Werewolf in London and liked it so much that he hired like the 3 big people from the makeup and John Landis as the director to do the Thriller video.
Yeah, for Thriller, and I remember watching that as a kid.
Yeah, that's pretty creepy.
Young, like 2000. That was always creepy to me.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my last point, is just on sound effects, or not sound effects. That's why, because I wrote SF like sound effects, not F. So just
special effects.
Special effects were good.
Yeah, and, very good.
They set a new bar, like a new standard. Too. I feel like I came across that.
They did the whole they did the whole subway chase, and then the guy goes up the stairs, and then the wolf just kind of peeks out at the bottom. That was like my favorite shot of the entire thing, because it's just subtle enough to be like, what is that? but it also gives you enough to say, like, oh, I hate that thing. That thing's a nightmare. I liked the subway.
Oh,
the end
yeah,
of the
yeah.
subway chase when the wolf just kind of peeks
That
out
was
at
good.
the end.
There was one shot, to be nitpicky, where they showed him running down the hall quite a ways, and you knew that the thing was right behind him, but then they cut to him down another hallway, I believe, and he goes down far enough that you're like, he should be right there.
I know exactly what shot you're talking about.
And then they cut back, and then he's like pretty close where you would expect him to be. So there's that I was like, oh, that's a way that they could do it, so they didn't have to show the whole thing again, or because they hadn't really shown it in its entirety.
I really liked the transformation scene, but like nothing was wrong with the effects or anything. It was more just kind of the sound design. It felt like the scream was just repeated over and over and over again. Yeah. And there wasn't any... Like, he wasn't reacting to anything that was happening. He was just screaming to scream. I don't know. I can't explain it, but I can still hear it in my head, and it just bugs me a little bit.
Yeah.
But the special effects on it are top-notch. Really enjoyed those. Like, if they are to do a remake, okay, here's part of what I'd do. One, it would be that nurse. She'd be, like, smoking a cigarette, like, hanging out. That'd be, like, our introduction back into the world. Mm-hmm. And I would keep the same practical kind of effects. Maybe enhance them with a little bit of computer stuff, but keep a lot of the practicality there, because that's really what sells it.
That was the main things that I want to talk about with that. So you want to wrap up on like a last point? I know we're still talking about the effects a little bit, so we can talk about that more if you'd like. But
no, I mean, I think I've said what I needed to say about the effects. I thought they were wonderful, and I think that more practical effects need to happen in today's movies. Like,
see, practical effects. That's what I've heard it called too. I don't know why I'm blanking on that.
Like, I don't want to bring up another movie while we're talking about one movie, but I also just watched the 1999 Mummy.
Ooh, yeah.
Which is
we watched that like a few months back.
Yeah, which is a great blend of like practical and computer effects, and like they didn't half-ass that movie. They full-assed it. So
that was good. They took the whole ass.
Yeah.
It was great. Yeah, and then like most sequels, it got kind of devolved over time as they went on. Yeah. But that's fine.
So final thought on Werewolf. Not super scary. Enjoyed it. I'm curious to see what a remake would be like.
Yeah, I could see that too. It'd be... I mean, the thing is, there's so many remakes, so I don't want to encourage it, but it could be good to see, because it's almost like how we've done some other movies. Sometimes it feels like a time capsule. Mm-hmm. This one did seem like it aged pretty well, because there's no other things in there that makes it seem out of the time. Just, the style,
right? Maybe
the pacing, and obviously the look of it, because of cameras have advanced. But I did have a stomach, almost visceral feeling. Don't want to just say reaction, but just a little bit of churning when I saw the the transformation of the werewolf. Right. That it still hits pretty well, and at least for me, and I like to think I have a pretty strong stomach, and I can see that thing. But
here's good. Here's what I'll say. How about this, Hollywood? You listening? You listening, Hollywood? Instead of rebooting this classic werewolf movie, how about you go ahead and come up with an original werewolf movie? We were kind of talking about it while you were gone, but other than just that one, because that one's independent, that one's not big studio. So
that's
how about we do some original stories, folks?
I think original stories overall is what's best, and that's where, if we do ever get to Jordan Peele stuff, that I feel like that was so good, breath of fresh air. Yeah. I felt like, I'm talking about, I felt like at the time, I was probably like 17, The Strangers felt like a different one. Yeah. And I liked it.
Here's what not to go on a big tangent about The Strangers. Yeah. Here's what I liked about it. in regards to what we were talking about with backstory and not giving enough and not having reasons for things, they did it perfectly in The Strangers. Why are you doing this to us? Because you opened the door.
Yep.
That's all I need. That tells me everything I need to know about these characters, why they're in this situation. Perfect. Without, delving into a deep backstory that I need all this information about. Like, I can fill in the blanks easily with just that one line.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, it's a good way to do it. And then for the protagonist, or you call them, even the relationship dynamics, you slowly get revealed.
Yeah.
And you get a sense. That's what it is. You need at least to be able to get a sense of what that character is, or who that character is, including the bad guy. Like what you just said, just from the one line, you're telling a lot from just that. If that's all it is, maybe for other movies or other characters, you need to have a little bit more to get that same kind of thing across. But you're right. That's perfect for that.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the other movie it was actually a remake. Tim Roth was in it. I'm blanking
Funny Games.
Funny Games. I was gonna say Perfect Game.
Yeah.
Okay, so Funny Games kind of does that too a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's drawn out in that they talk to those people more.
Right.
And so there's more to it, but there's moments in there where you're like, oh, okay, they're crazy and they're doing this for whatever reason.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
I think that's good. That was American Werewolf in London, not Paris, not England, but London, 1981. Thank you very much, folks. I was born in the 80s.
I was born in the late 80s.
90s kid. Yeah, late 80s.